Welcome everybody to the DAM Guru program member webinar, Color Management Strategies for DAM. My name is Oliver Heuser and I'm the CEO and co-founder of FHCon, which is a German-based company. I have about 15 years experience in the media publishing industry, and we are experienced DAM and web-to-print integrators. So we take different solutions and put them together, sometimes with some custom development, like a portal we create specifically with a cockpit view, but whatever. We'll also do enterprise hosting, so we offer like a complete package here. So our customers, they range from non-profit to global companies, and mostly we're involved in media publishing and e-commerce and so on and so on. So that brings me, of course, to the main topic here. Why color management, and why should I manage it? Why should I take an interest in it? As you know, as a marketeer, you are responsible for your brand. So you want to make your brand look good. People should recognize it. If they see it, they should immediately recognize that this is your brand. And this doesn't work if the logo colors on your print catalog and on your website, if they don't match, or if, for instance, in your e-commerce shop you offer a range of products like green, blue, brown, whatnot, and then the colors to the images do not really match. The worst thing that can happen is that someone sees your logo or sees something from your brand and doesn't recognize it. If I take a very well-known logo like Coca-Cola logo, we immediately realize, oh, there's something wrong if the color isn't right. If the people are getting confused, we don't want that. What is actually your challenge in that? First of all, you have different image sources. The images can be produced by digital cameras, still scanners, and so on. Then, of course, you have to look at what kind of image formats do you want to use. Most people know JPEG, TIFF, but there are some others out. Do they make sense? Yes, no. We're going over this in a bit. Then, of course, the big thing is color conversion for print channels and for non-print channels. Something that I will, mention a couple of times. I explain it. Also is it's the CMYK for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key for black, and of course RGB for red, green, and blue colors. Then one more thing comes to that is the target mediums like print, computer, tablets. All have their own set of colors they can actually display. It's very simple. Back then we had monitors that could only show black and green. Now we have 4K monitors who can show a huge amount of colors. Then, of course, put the buzzwords. The main challenge is what some call multi-channel, some call omni-channel. I'm a little older. Back then it was called cross-media publishing. So basically what you want to achieve is that you have a source image that you can use for all different channels. I'm going to over a little color management basics. First of all, let's look at some of the information you see if you, for instance, open an image in Photoshop and you look at the document information. You immediately spot something like called a color mode. That's back. It's very not really readable, but it's a profile. It's an sRGB profile that is attached to the image. Of course, you get the information. How many pixels has the image resolutions, which is also important if you want to use an image for print and for non-print. And of course the color, in that case it's an RGB color image. But what does it actually mean? Like I said, the RGB, red, green, and blue are what we also call light colors. But basically, how does it work? In short, the human eye sees brightness levels in red, green, and blue. So if you see a color, for instance, you see yellow, it's different colors that have merged, in that case, blue and green. So what you see here is actually the LAB model. That's another very, it's a model that can show, where you can pinpoint like every color within a coordination system. So the L stands for the light. Actually, it's a 3D, three-dimensional model. and then A and B are the opposing colors, in that case red, blue, green. So but the big thing is about, that's always the first question, or that some of my customers tell me, it's like, well, why don't we use that if you can accurately pinpoint every color? You can think about it, but it doesn't make any sense, because all the image files would be huge, because we had to store all these information. So what happens is that you have certain standards, for instance, the European Color Initiative or the International Color Consortium. And what they did was that they defined, and these are like the blue and the rectangles in it. You see the legend on the right, where they said, well, we will define a certain RGB and a certain CMYK color range. And in that range, these colors can be reproduced, in that range. Which means there is no one RGB color space and there is no one CMYK color space. It's just a set amount of coordinates and range that we can display. And what is apparent here is that if I make a color transformation, I don't have a one-to-one match to what I can display in RGB and what I can display in CMYK. So let's take a look at that. That's what you also will encounter. The difference actually between the print colors, the CMYK, and the RGB colors is the one works additive and the other subtractive. So additive is pretty simple. In the middle, on the right model, you have the white spot. I mean, this is if you have red, green, blue light, 100%, you get white. If you just see, one beam red, it's green, and it's blue. If they're two different mixed, like added, then you have yellow, or you have the magenta, or you have the cyan, or anything in between. With print colors, it's more you use a color, you print it, and the light that shines on an object gets filtered. So actually, if you see yellow, then the object is not really yellow. It's just that the other colors get filtered, and that's what we call that's the subtractive process. So and that works really with each color layer you put on as another filter, up to the point where you print all colors. You probably get black. But if you just use yellow, magenta, and cyan, it's more like a brownish. So there's the extra color, the key, the black we're using. So coming to the point where you want, where you get your images, and we want to think about how can we translate the image. If you get an RGB image and you want to convert it to a CMYK image. For that, we have so-called ICC profiles from the International Color Consortium. It pretty much works a little if you translate a language. So if there's someone speaking German and the target audience is English, then okay, translator, please translate German to English. So, and even in that example, you see it's not that simple, because, well, the German probably speaks German, High German, but the English, is he like a British citizen? Is he an American? So still different words are used. So one of the main thing is what you actually want to have if you want to use images as your single source of truth, is that the correct profile is attached to them. Otherwise, you just know, it's a colorful image, but you can't really translate it. And that's usually what happens if you have images and you just convert them, and then they turn out really bad, or where you say, well, the colors, they don't really match. On the ICC website, you will find a lot of ICC profiles for different things, for like sRGB for monitors or for mobile phones, and even more for all the different print processes. As you might know, there are different print, like offset, then you have PVR, print, whatnot, and they're all different profiles, because depending on what kind of print process you're using, you cannot just use all the colors that are available, because even the biggest CMYK color space is smaller than the RGB color space. So coming to that point, if you want to build up your image pool, so what color range or what color space should you use? I mean, this is always the first question. And then, of course, we recommend the RGB color space because it's much bigger. And usually, if your supplier doesn't get you anything else, you will probably get images in RGB or sRGB. Yeah, I'm telling this because some of the suppliers, they're doing that. I mean, this is like, if you encounter or if you check your system and say, oh, we just have CMYK images in our DAM, why do we have that? Simple answer is that in some workflows that are very print sensitive, that's exactly what people did in the beginning. They got the RGB images and they knew, oh, these are just for web. We need them for print, so we change everything. First thing we do, change everything to RGB, to convert anything to CMYK. Then we do the post-processing, like the color correction, the retouching and everything. And then we have the image print ready. But what actually happened is the following. Also, this is how I always explain it. So you have these big bottle of RGB, it's an image, right? So you have the big bottle of RGB data. There's lots of data in it, and you could, of course, use that to do color corrections, which work much, much better because you have more data. More is always good. But what people actually did is, they took the bottle and poured it into the glass, the CMYK part, and threw the rest away. So, and then if you come to the point where you said, well, now we also have a website and we want to also have the images on the website. So, we have to convert them back to RGB because, the browsers and everything can only display RGB data. So basically we threw away a whole bunch of data we might have used. That was just, like I hope not too long introduction to what are the different things of, what are the ground level color management, what should I know, what should I need, and what are some of the terms you encounter, like, if someone tells you something about ICC profiles and sRGB and whatnot. Now we're coming to the point where we are trying to define the right image properties for our digital asset management. So a good thing is always that you try to create your own media standard, because it's like you get images from your suppliers, and you have to put up certain rules, because otherwise, my experience, the suppliers will give you anything, because it's probably comfortable for them. Maybe they have an old workflow, or maybe they never did anything else and just said, well, you get the images, you get JPEG images. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're also paying them a lot of money for these images, and it's like, also my analogy, you go to a car dealer and you say, I want to buy this Porsche, and they're like, yeah, okay, we take all the money for the Porsche and take the little Volkswagen there. I mean, this is what we're giving you. And you wouldn't do that. Of course not. I mean, same with your images. You're paying a lot of money for them, so you should, get a really good quality image, not just, that something nice is on it, but also from the technical view. So what we recommend, and this is really an example where you say, well, I would say TIFF, and I want to have a lossless compression. So if I, open and maybe save the image again, that I don't have any more artifacts in it. I also want to display or say it. They have a specific size. In that case, 3,500 times 2,480 pixels, so I can use my images for the German A4 format. And I also want to define a color space. In that case, it's sRGB, because most of the camera profiles are sRGB, or Adobe RGB, or the ECI RGB. ECI is from the European Color Initiative. So, and this is what should be the standard image I want to accept in my digital asset management system. Of course, there are probably exceptions, but by large, I want to have that image, because from that image I can do pretty much anything I want. I can use it for print, and I also can use it for everything, web, even the big retimer. So comes of course to the point: how can my DAM help me to enforce these rules? So best way is if I have the possibility to check the technical quality of an image. So if I can check, okay, you upload images, and I want to check if it's a TIFF, it's a certain size, is an ICC profile attached to it. So if not, it goes into a workflow where, I don't know, an email goes back to the photographer, or I get an alert and, ask the guys, what in the world are you uploading there? Sometimes, especially if you work in the discount markets, sometimes you don't have a choice because the suppliers are like, this is a product and these are only the images we have, but it should be a, a special case, not the norm. Then, of course, also very nice is if your DAM has capabilities of providing workflows for choosing images. Right now, people, with the advent of digital cameras, people are making not just one or two product shots, but they do like 10. Of course, you don't want to, use all 10, but then you have to choose like, oh, I want this and that. And it's nice if your DAM can, has a workflow where you can invite relevant people and they can all, make their choices. And then you have your 2 or 3 images you can use. And of course, that you have workflows where you can send the images to someone who does the color correction or the retouching with Photoshop. Once you have your images in your digital asset management and you organize them and everything, and then it comes to the point where you have to provide images to the channel. So in the beginning, I said, what are channels? Could be anything from print to websites to Facebook covers or to e-commerce shops. And we never know what's what's coming up in the next I don't know 10 years. So still with a recommendation, which is another point that TIFF format has been around for some time and it will be around for some time. There are some newer ones you probably also heard about, like I don't know, DNG, raw format and whatnot. But sometimes, even though they are probably technically more advanced, you never know if, I don't know, a new software appears and it doesn't work with it because they say, well, we use the standards and we can understand JPEGs and TIFFs and PNGs probably. So what I did here is just, define some of my channels. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I want, for print, I want TIFF 300 dpi and I want to convert it to an ISO-coated V2 CMYK profile. So I want to print it in offset. I also know if I provide my people with that information, they can use this image, and if they want to do some work on it, we are pretty safe that the suppliers or they're working with can work with those images. Still, even though if you have a full RGB workflow, it's really nice, it's great. Once you convinced everyone that is great, because you get these old media engineers who are still like, oh no, all color corrections has to be made in CMYK. So no, I mean. Then of course websites using sRGB because it's a profile, your browser knows, your mobile devices know. And I enforce some of the, like width and height, for instance. Facebook cover is a no-brainer because it's 851 to 315. With a shop, I probably have a lot of variations, like a thumbnail image, one for the basket and one preview, and so on and so on. When it comes to that you want to deliver images, then we get to the point, does my DAM know about color management? Usually my experience is that most DAM vendors, they heard about it, but they never really put a real focus on it. Like, I mean, of course there's some special solutions, well, special not, but they come from the media publishing background. But some of them are just like, yeah, we have this conversion thingy in there. So what can you do? I mean, you can look at the specifications, but ask people, ask your vendor, never too late. What you can do is check. Usually it's something like called download formats or variants or something like that, where you will find settings where you can say, well, if someone wants to download an image, this is the target format like JPEG and it's 72 dpi. And then if you're lucky, there are also profiles or something as a property in the graphical user interface. If not, again, ask your suppliers or ask your DAM integrators. Sometimes what happens is that those are like sort of hidden properties you can set, where you said, well, we just want to have sRGB as a profile, and we just set this as a default, but it's probably not apparent in the interface you are seeing. Well, and of course, if all else fails, you can use an external conversion engine. I know a whole bunch of people who are doing this using, for instance, Helios or Switch workflow or whatever. I mean, there are lots of solutions out there. Well, but still, if you're in luck, you have a DAM that knows at least something about color management, and you don't have to invest in external solutions. I hope something what you learned in the past minutes is that, well, color management is not something to be really afraid of. I mean, it's a technical, it's mostly a technical issue. They're standards, and you should use them. They're like I said, the ICC profiles. There are certain industry standards everyone sort of uses, but sometimes I'm really shocked that people are just like, yeah, we're using this and that. And if you ask them, why are you using this? I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure. So you should know, or you should have some ideas now how to check if your DAM is color management ready, or if you're looking at a new DAM system, you know that you can ask some of the right questions. And I hope I also gave you some ideas or made you think about your current workflow. How can you maybe tweak it? How can you do something different? Don't be afraid to change anything. I mean, one of my customers, I went to that 8 different brands, and they had 8 different ways of working with their images. It was actually, well, funny. No, I was looking for the hidden camera actually, but I was like, why are you doing this? First thing we did was like doing a media standard for them, and afterwards everything went a little smoother and much better. So, and of course, I hope identify possible problems in your current workflow. So, like it's always like, oh, we always did this, or actually, we can work better if we get the images in that format. Which brings me to my last slide for questions. I have a question. I will repeat this if this is correct. The question is, would I recommend RGB master storage even our output is virtually always print? Wouldn't that mean we have to convert every time we need a photo? Yes, in fact, I do. Why? Just to give you a real life example, I had this customer and they did it like I showed you the old way, where they changed everything to CMYK, and they took the CMYK images, put them in InDesign, and designed their catalogs, made a PDF, and it went into print. So everything was fine. Until we showed up and we looked at because they had an in-house photographer, and she made wonderful images, and she had this big Cena back camera, and we took the RGB images from their products and said, well, let us show you something. So we did the RGB files, used ECI RGB, and then we put everything, used those in InDesign and everything. And then when we produced the PDF documents, we converted them back to the CMYK ISO coded, and then we did a proof, and we showed that proof the marketing director, and he looked at and said, "Oh, this is the conventional proof with your data, and this is the one we did with the RGB data, and which we converted, the last point." And he looked at it and he was like, "Oh, can I please have this? I think I have to talk to my my supplier here, because your result is much better than the other one." The thing is, if you're using all the standards, if you store your images in ECI RGB and you do the color corrections, and even in Photoshop you can do like a soft proof, where you can say, okay, the corrections, and they will look in RGB look like that, and then you can show them in CMYK. Once you're happy, you can use them in your workflow, and you can actually print them, because the conversion process is pretty, in my experience, or usually automatically. I mean, it's not like, you have to, and the result is almost the same once you set up your system like that. So you don't have really a big variance if you stick to all the standards. There is another question. I have heard that when designing for print, a Photoshop designer should work in CMYK directly. Is this no longer the case? That is actually an interesting question. I understand it if I actually use Photoshop, and I will, well, put it in my German words, I will, use the Photoshop stuff and paint actually an image there. I don't think it shouldn't actually make any difference, but if you if you know from the start the image you're doing, you're designing in Photoshop and you're using it for print, I don't see anything wrong doing this all in CMYK. So I hope I could that answers your question. My point, this was what I was getting at. My point is that I want to store my images as media neutral as possible. So because in my projects, the customers sometimes they don't know if, well, it's always print, maybe, no. There could be an e-commerce shop in 1 year or so, and the worst thing that can happen is that we then start to, we have to convert all the images, or wrong, did something wrong in consulting them to, don't worry about the e-commerce part. Okay, coming to the next question. Why would I recommend TIFF for master storage instead of PSD? You can, of course, use PSD, assuming that everyone you work together, everyone you work together is using Photoshop. In our cases, sometimes the images are automatically transferred from the DAM to a different solution, and like an e-commerce shop. And from our experience, we have less problems converting TIFF images than PSDs, because you can do a lot in PSD images that can really mess up any workflow. Still, if you use TIFF as a master, TIFF also supports layers. It supports the pyramid scheme some people use for doing the zoom images, and a couple of other stuff. So this is why we recommend this. Well, I hope I was able to answer that question too. Sometimes what happens is that, of course, you use the Photoshop files as like a working file, but the master image you're using for the channels, I recommend the TIFF format. So the next question I did not really mention in my presentation. I thought about this too. The next question is, if we get photos that are not compatible with our in-house standards, do you recommend converting them before we store them, or should we just leave them as is? It really depends. It's the same if you if you take over, just a couple of weeks ago, I took over a DAM project, and they had, I don't know, from 2002 to 2008, they just had CMYK images, and then they started using RGB files. So, and they were also thinking about transferring, saying, well, why shouldn't we just convert all the CMYK images to RGB? Well, not a good idea. There are a couple of factors, actually. If you get the images and they are like color correct and everything is done, I wouldn't touch them, because every time you do a color conversion, even you alter the image. I mean, it's getting better. It's getting worse every time you do a color conversion, even with the standards and everything. So I would if you don't have to convert it, just leave them. If you get the images and you still have to do some work on them, like retouching, color corrections, I would probably go ahead and convert them to RGB and work from them. Okay, the next question is also pretty interesting. It is realistic to have a DAM perform image conversions. Wouldn't we always get a better result via Photoshop? Maybe. To tell you the truth, maybe. We did a couple of tests with dump systems. Well, we used Photoshop to convert a couple of images, and then we used a couple of dump systems to do the same. I mean, some of the results were really bad, but there are some with a little tweaking, and if you know what you're doing, you can get pretty much the same result you will have in Photoshop. The main thing is for the conversion part is actually why should the DAM convert? I mean, is especially large customers that want to supply the images to different markets, to different countries. They might have whole different requirements. I haven't mentioned this, but there was one customer we consulted, and they needed the images for different magazines. And then the real fun actually starts because you have to use different profiles, and it's different. The New York Times magazine, they have different sizes of images and whatnot. So that's pretty interesting. And another thing is that I think everyone would love to use Photoshop, but Adobe is very funny about the restrictions. If there was a Photoshop server, everything would be good. But it's, really, I don't know. It's the license scheme is really weird for them. I never understood why they are not releasing a server like that. Oh, that was the last question. I hope everyone had an interesting time and learned something. And thank you very much for attending.